I've titled my story tonight, The Paperboy. Mom and Dad, do you have a minute? I need to talk to you about something. Sure, Jamie, sit down. What's on your mind, son? Well, I need a new bicycle, and I just want to know if you'll let me get a paper route where I can earn the money to buy the bike I want. Well, Jamie, do you know what's required to have a paper route? Well, I've talked to several of my friends that have them, and they kind of told me what it's all about. Well, where's this paper route going to be? Well, it's be right around here within a 2 or 3 mile radius. When would you start? Well, I don't know for sure. I haven't talked to the newspaper office, but I heard probably about 2 weeks. Well, give your mom and I a few minutes to talk about it. So Jamie went on back to his bedroom. Brad and Sheila started talking about all the good and bad things about having a paper route. They came to the conclusion that they thought it'd be a good idea for Jamie to get a paper route. It'd teach him several things that he'd need to know in life: how to be committed, dedicated, dependable, and most of all, self-worth. So after a few minutes, Jamie came back into the living room. Well, did you decide on anything yet? We did, Jamie. Your mom and I think it'll be a good idea for you to have a paper route. There's a lot of things that you'll learn from having one. But we want your assurance that when the going gets tough, you're not going to quit. Oh, no, Dad, I won't quit. I really want a bicycle. Okay, Jamie. Oh, thanks. I'm going to call the newspaper office tomorrow and talk to them, and I'll tell you what they let me know about. So the next morning, Jamie got up. He was pacing the floor, couldn't wait to call the newspaper office. And 2 minutes after 9, he called the office and spoke to a lady that was there. She asked him to come in at 10:30 for an interview. Mom, I just spoke to the newspaper office, and they said to come in at 10:30 for an interview, so I'm going to go ahead and leave right now and ride my bike to town and have the interview. Okay, Jamie, be careful. Okay. So Jamie went for his interview, and he was in there for about a half hour talking, and she gave him the job. She gave him some supplies to start with, and he went home and told his mom all about the interview. He says, yeah, Mom, I got the job, and I start in 2 weeks. And look at the supplies they gave me to start with. They gave me a box of rubber bands to put around the newspapers. They gave me a box of plastic bags to put the newspapers in on rainy days. And they gave me these 2 big cloth bags to put the newspapers in to carry them on my bicycle. And I have this list with all the people that I'm going to deliver newspapers to. I think I'm going to go out later on today and find out where everyone lives and introduce myself to all of them and give them my name and address and phone number in case they need to get in touch with me. Well, that's a good idea, Jamie. So later on that day, Jamie went out to meet all the people on his route. He came back about 2 hours later. Well, Mom, I met everybody, and I know where they all live, and they all seem pretty nice except for one person, Mr. Weber over on Maple Street. He's a grouch. Well, Jamie, I'm sure he'll be okay. Well, I sure hope so. So now Jamie had to wait 2 weeks. That was like an eternity for him. Finally, the big day came. He got up early. He went out to the curb and got his newspapers, and he brought them in the house and set them in the living room floor and started folding papers. His dad got up and helped him fold papers, and his mom got up and fixed him a big breakfast. They helped him pick up the big cloth bags full of newspapers and put on his bicycle, and off he went. They turned and looked at each other after he left, and they couldn't believe it. Their little boy is growing up so fast. A few hours later, Jamie came back home. Well, Mom, I got all the papers delivered, and there weren't any problems. Just then the telephone rang. Jamie, telephone. Oh, hi, Mr. Weber. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll do better tomorrow. Jamie, was that a complaint already? Yeah, Mr. Weber said I threw the newspaper in his bush, and he wants it on the front porch. I told him I'd do better tomorrow. So the next day, Jamie went out on his paper route, finished his route up again. He just walked in the back door, and the phone rang again. Jamie, telephone. Oh, hi, Mr. Weber. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll do better tomorrow. Was that Mr. Weber again, Jamie? Yeah, Mom, he said that I threw the newspapers in his flower bed, and I destroyed some flowers. I don't know what he's so upset for. They're just stupid flowers. Well, Jamie, we can't keep having complaints every day. You have to do something. Well, Mom, it's hard to throw that newspaper from the front sidewalk and make it land right on the front porch. I'm afraid I'm going to throw it too hard and break a window. Well, Jamie, you better figure something out. I will. I'm going to do something different tomorrow. So the next day, Jamie went out, finished his paper route, just walked in the back door, and the phone rang again. Oh, hi, Mr. Weber. Oh, I won't do that anymore. Jamie, was that Mr. Weber again? Yeah, Mom, I rode my bike across his yard today and tossed the newspaper up on his front porch, and he doesn't want anybody on his grass. I don't know why. I didn't hurt it. It's just grass. Well, Jamie, you better do something. We can't have him calling every day. Oh, I'm going to do something different tomorrow, Mom. So the next day, Jamie went out on his route. This time he didn't even get home when Mr. Weber called. When he came in the back door, his mom told him, Jamie, Mr. Weber just called. You better give him a call back. Oh, hi, Mr. Weber. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll be more careful. Well, Jamie, what did he complain about this time? Well, Mom, he said I got grease on the sidewalk. Well, Jamie, how can you get grease on a sidewalk delivering newspapers? Well, Mom, what I do now when I get to Mr. Weber's house, I park my bike out on the front sidewalk, and I take a newspaper out of the bag, and I walk it up and lay it on the front porch, and when I get back to my bike, every time I stop my bike, the chain falls off. So I have to put the chain back on, so I must have got some grease on the sidewalk from his chain. Well, Jamie, you better figure something out. Boy, Mom, I don't know what I'm going to do. He complains about everything. Well, Jamie, I think it might be time you talk to your dad and ask for his advice. Well, I think you're right, Mom. I'll ask Dad right after dinner tonight. So Jamie went outside and started working on his bicycle. And Sheila called Brad at work and told him about the problem Jamie's been having with Mr. Weber, and that he's going to ask for his advice after dinner. So that night, as soon as they finished dinner, hey, Dad, can I talk to you for a few minutes? Sure, son. Let's go in the living room. Well, Jamie, your mom's been telling about all the problems you're having with Mr. Weber and all the complaints and everything. Yeah, Dad, I don't know what I'm going to do. He complains about everything. What do you think I should do? Well, Jamie, I think there's two things you should do. The first thing, do you remember a few weeks ago when Pastor gave a sermon on the day Jesus rode into town and how all of a sudden everybody was praising him and following him all over the place? They just couldn't get enough of him. And then in a matter of a few days, they were all yelling, crucify him, crucify him. He was betrayed by one of his own disciples, denied 3 times by another. He was turned over, tortured, and beaten, mocked, spit upon, made fun of. They hung him on a cross. God had found a way for us to be forgiven, and that's through Jesus. Jesus hung there on that cross, and through his eyes, he could see each one of us. He saw right through every one of us. And with his heart, he loved us more than any love you can ever imagine. So for the next 60 days, I want you to look at Mr. Weber through the eyes of Christ, with the heart of Christ, and always remember the cross. Wow, Dad, that's going to be pretty hard to do. Well, I'm sure it will be. But just remember, for the next 60 days, look at Mr. Weber through the eyes of Christ, with the heart of Christ, and always remember the cross. Okay, Dad, I'll do it. And then the second thing I think you should do is find out all you can about Mr. Weber. Something in his life has changed and made him the way he is today. And if you can find out what that is, you might be able to understand him a little bit better. Well, how can I do that, Dad? Well, I think you ought to go talk to Pastor. He might know Mr. Weber, or he might know someone that does. Well, that's a good idea. I'll go there right after I finish my newspaper route tomorrow. So the next day, right after Jamie finished his paper route, he rode by the church and he went inside. Miss Nancy was there. She's a church secretary. She's been a secretary for over 25 years. Well, good morning, Miss Nancy. Is Pastor busy? Well, Jamie was on the telephone. Go ahead and sit down and I'll go find out. Nancy walked down to the pastor's office. Pastor, you busy? Jamie Larson's here to see you. Well, tell him I'll be right out. So Nancy walked back to her office and sat down at her desk. Jamie, he'll be right with you. Say, I hear you got a paper route now. Yeah, I just started this week, and I'm having trouble with one person on my route, and that's why I came in to talk to Pastor about. Well, I'm sure he'll give you some good advice. So a few minutes later, Pastor came in. Well, good morning, Jamie. Come on, let's go back to my office. So Jamie followed Pastor back to his office. Pastor closed the door behind them. They talked for about a half hour. Jamie told him all the problems he's having with Mr. Weber and all the things that his dad told him to do, and wanted to know if Pastor knew Mr. Weber. Well, Jamie, offhand, I don't know him, Mr. Weber. Give me some time, and I'll check the church records, and I'll talk to a few people, and I'll get back with you. Oh, great, thanks. Well, Jamie, you have a good day. See you Sunday. Jamie left. Have a good day, Miss Nancy. You too, Jamie. Jamie went home and told his mom about the meeting he had with Pastor. Later on that afternoon, Jamie went out and was working on his bicycle. And he saw a car pull up in the driveway. So he stood up and he wiped his hands off, and he saw there was Pastor. He walked down the driveway and met him halfway. Boy, I sure didn't expect to see you this soon. Well, Jamie, I got some information for you, and I'm out doing visitation right now, so I thought I'd come by and tell you what I found out. I checked the church computer, and we didn't have anything in the computer on Mr. Weber. So I went downstairs to the old storage shed and went through some file cabinets, and I did find a few things on Mr. Weber. It seems that he was once a member of our church. He was married. He had a son, and then there was a death. His wife and son were killed. And that's all the information we had here at the church. But I did find someone who knew Mr. Weber, Mrs. Kennedy. Her husband, John, was pastor here for over 35 years. And she says she remembers Mr. Weber quite well. So I talked to her about it and told her you'd probably be over to talk to her. And here's her name and her address and phone number. I hope it helps. Oh, it sure will. Thanks, Pastor. Jamie went in the house and told his mom and asked if she could take him to Mrs. Kennedy's house. About a half hour later, they left to go to Mrs. Kennedy's. They pulled up out front, got out of the car and walked up the front door, and Jamie rang the doorbell. A frail little lady came to the door. Yes, can I help you? Oh, hi, Mrs. Kennedy. I'm Jamie Larson. This is my mom, Sheila. Pastor said he spoke to you about the information I need on Mr. Weber. Oh, yes, come on in. So she opened the door, and they walked into the living room and sat down. I don't get too many visitors anymore. Would you care for something to drink? No, we're fine, Mrs. Kennedy. Well, Jamie, I knew Mr. Weber quite well. His first name is Jack. He came to our church as a youth. And when he graduated from high school, he went on to college. Graduated from college, he came back home, and he married his high school sweetheart. Her name's Stephanie. They soon became a member of the church, and they both got very active. Jack taught Sunday school, and later on, he became a deacon. Stephanie sang in the choir and helped out in the nursery. Later on, they had a baby. His name was Joshua. He was the pride and joy of their lives. Later on, as Joshua got a little older, he loved helping his dad out in the yard. He would always help him water the yard and cut the grass just about every day. And Stephanie loved flowers. She had the prettiest flower beds in town. She spent hours and hours watering the flowers. And then on Joshua's 13th birthday, Jack left work early that day and went by to pick up a very special gift that he'd ordered in for Joshua. Stephanie and Joshua went to the store to pick up some ice cream and stopped by the bakery and got a birthday cake. On the way home, there was an accident, and they both were killed. Jack was never the same after that. He quit coming to church. He didn't associate with anybody anymore. You'd see him once in a while in a grocery store, but not too often. You'd see him out in his yard every day, though, watering flowers in the yard and cutting grass. Every Saturday, he takes fresh cut flowers to the cemetery. John and I went over several times and talked to him, and after a while, he asked us not to come back anymore. So that's really the last thing I know about Mr. Weber. I hope it helps. Oh, it sure does, Mrs. Kennedy. Thank you. Well, you have a good day. Well, you come on back anytime. Jamie and his mom went out and got in the car, and they started driving home. Well, Jamie, she gave you a lot of information. I hope you're going to be able to use it. Oh, I sure will, Mom. I know exactly what I'm going to do starting tomorrow. So the next day, Jamie got up for his paper route. When he got over to Mr. Weber's house, he parked his bike out front, took the newspaper, walking it up to the front porch, and Mr. Weber is out watering his flowers like he usually is. And, good morning, Mr. Weber. Your flowers sure look pretty today. And he threw the paper on the front porch. He turned around and he waved at Mr. Weber. Have a good day, Mr. Weber. And he did this day after day after day. Finally, after about 3 weeks, something changed. Good morning, Mr. Weber. Your flowers sure look pretty today. And all of a sudden, Jamie heard a mumble come from Mr. Weber. It almost sounded like he said thank you. Then Jamie put the paper on the front porch, and he turned and waved at Mr. Weber. "Have a good day, Mr. Weber." Mr. Weber's hand came up a little bit as a slight waving gesture. Then after that, it got a little bit easier and easier, and they began to talk more and more. And pretty soon they talked every day. "Well, good morning, Mr. Weber. Your flowers sure look pretty today." "Well, thank you, Jamie." "Have a good day, Mr. Weber." "You too, Jamie." And one day when Jamie went back to get on his bicycle, the chain had fallen off. So he started putting the chain back on, and Mr. Weber laid down the garden hose and walked over by him. "Having trouble with your bicycle, Jamie?" "Yeah, every time I get off of it, the chain falls off, and I have to stop and put it back on." "Well, it looks like it's all wore out. You need a new bicycle." "Well, Mr. Weber, that's where I got my paper route so I can save up enough money to get the bicycle I want." "Well, just be careful and don't get grease on the sidewalk." "Oh, I won't. I'll be careful." So Jamie got the chain back on his bike, and he left to finish up the rest of his paper route. And 3 or 4 days later, Jamie got to Mr. Weber's house, and Mr. Weber wasn't outside like he usually is, and Jamie just thought he had overslept. But when he got up on the front porch, he knew that something was wrong. So he called his mom on the phone. "Mom, something's wrong." "What, Jamie, you okay?" "Oh, no, Mom, not me. Here at Mr. Weber's. When I got here, he wasn't outside like he usually is, and when I got up on the front porch, yesterday's newspaper is still here, and the mail is still in the mailbox. I knocked on the door and rang the doorbell several times, but he didn't come. I went and looked in the garage, and his car's still there." "Well, are you done with your route, Jamie?" "No, I'm only about halfway." "Well, I'll get dressed as fast as I can, and I'll go over there and see if I can help." "Okay, Mom, when I get done, I'm going to come back." So Jamie finished his paper route as fast as he could. And when he came back by Mr. Weber's house, he saw his mom's car still out front. "Well, Mom, is Mr. Weber okay?" "Well, Jamie, they just took him to the hospital. He had fallen down, and they didn't know how long he had been down there. He's getting a little bit dehydrated and hadn't had his medicine in a couple days. They just want to take him to the hospital and get him checked out and make sure that he's okay." "Well, I sure hope he is. I'll call the hospital later on, Jamie, and I'll find out." So later on that date, "Jamie, I just spoke to the hospital, and they said Mr. Weber's resting, that they're running some tests on him, and he'll be in the hospital at least a week." So the next day, Jamie got up for his paper route. The very first place he went to was the hospital. Pulled up out front, parked his bike, got the newspaper out of the bag. He walked inside and found out what floor Mr. Weber was on. He went up to the 3rd floor to the nurse's station. "Is Mr. Weber on this floor?" "Yes, he is." "Well, could you give him his newspaper, please?" "Well, I think he's awake. You can go give it to him yourself if you'd like." "No, I don't want him to know that I'm here. I just want him to have his newspaper." "Okay, I'll give it to him." Jamie did this all week, and then on Saturday he asked, "Is Mr. Weber coming home today?" "No, they didn't get all the test results back. He's probably going to be in the hospital another week." "Oh, okay. Well, here's the newspaper." And he left. All the next week, he did the same thing, took the newspaper every day to Mr. Weber, and then on Saturday, he asked again, "Is Mr. Weber coming home today?" "Yes, he should be coming home. The doctor said he'd be in later today to sign his release papers." "Oh, good. Well, here's his newspaper." Then he left, and he went home. The nurse took the newspaper in to Mr. Weber. "Well, Mr. Weber, looks like you're going to be going home today. The doctor's supposed to be in later today to sign your release papers. Here's your newspaper." "Say, nurse, will you be able to call a cab for me when I leave to take me home?" "Oh, sure, we'll have one for you." So several hours later, the doctor came in and signed the release, and the nurse got the wheelchair and went into Mr. Weber's room. "Well, Mr. Weber, your doctor just signed the release papers. You can go home now. Here's your ride to the front door." "Oh, no, I don't need that thing. I can walk." "No, that's our policy. You have to get a ride to the front door." "Well, all right." He says, "Say, nurse, I was looking this bill over, and I don't see anything on here about newspapers. How much do I owe you for all those papers?" "Oh, Mr. Weber, you don't owe us anything for those papers. Those weren't ours. Those were yours." "Mine?" "Yeah, your paperboy came here every morning and brought your newspaper to you." "My paperboy, Jamie?" "Well, he never said what his name was. He just said it was your paperboy, and these are your papers." "Does he live close by?" "Well, no, he lives over by me, and I live on Maple Street." "Well, that's almost 10 miles away." I can't even get my paperboy to put the paper on the front porch. He says, your paperboy came 10 miles out of his way to bring you yours. I think you're pretty special. Well, I don't know about that. Say, nurse, could we stop here at the gift shop before I leave? I have to get some flowers for my wife. Well, that's real thoughtful of you, Mr. Weber. Oh, I give my wife flowers every Saturday. See, I told you you were special. You give your wife flowers every Saturday, and your paperboy goes out of his way to bring you your newspaper. Just then the cab came, and the nurse helped him get in the cab and shut the door, and they drove off. Well, where to, sir? Well, I actually need you to take me 2 places. First, I want to go to the cemetery and take these flowers to my wife. Then I want you to wait for me and then take me home. Oh, sure, I can do that. So on the way to the cemetery, they were just doing small talk. So, how long were you in the hospital for, sir? Well, I was in the hospital 2 weeks. Well, you sure look like you're well and rested up. Yeah, I feel really good, but I got to hurry up and get home, though. I have to water my flowers in the yard and cut the grass. I hope they didn't die. Well, I'm sure one of your neighbors has done that for you. Oh, I don't know. I don't get along too good with my neighbors. Well, neighbors do things like that in a time of need. Well, I don't know who would have. So they get to the cemetery, and Mr. Weber tells the driver which direction to go, and they stop. And Mr. Weber got out, started walking up to the gravesite, and he saw that there were already some fresh-cut flowers in the vase. So he put the ones that he had bought in with them, and he knelt down, and he started talking to Stephanie and Joshua for a while. When he got done, he got up, and he wiped the tears from his eyes. He went back, and he got in the cab and says, okay, you can take me home now. I live at 1312 Maple Street. So when they pulled up in front of Mr. Weber's house, the driver turned to him. See, I told you somebody'd take care of your yard. Look at all those pretty flowers, and look how green that grass is. In fact, it looks like somebody just cut it. Well, I sure don't know who would have done that. So Mr. Weber got out, and he paid the cab driver the fee. He gave him a tip. Then he shut the door, and as he turned around, he saw down at the end of the street, he saw Jamie on his bicycle, towing the lawnmower alongside. So he went inside his house, and he started thinking of some special way that he's going to be able to tell Jamie thank you. So he thought he was going to do, and he wanted to wait for a very special moment. So the next day he got up to go out to water his flowers, and when he got on the front porch, the newspaper was already there. He had missed Jamie that day. Next day he went out, and again he had missed Jamie. The paper was already there. The third day, when he stepped out on the porch, Jamie hadn't been there yet. So he went out and started watering his flowers, and Jamie came up on his bicycle. Well, good morning, Mr. Weber. Your flowers sure look pretty today. Glad to see you home. Well, thank you, Jamie. It's good to be home. Jamie put the paper on the front porch, and he went back to get on his bicycle, and the chain had fallen off. So Mr. Weber laid down his hose, and he walked over to Jamie. You still having trouble with your bike, Jamie? Yeah, Mr. Weber, every once in a while the chain still falls off. So I tell you what, he says, let's go in my garage, and I'll get some tools, and I'll help you fix it. Oh, thanks, Mr. Weber. So Jamie followed him into the garage, and Mr. Weber picked up a screwdriver and a pair of pliers and a hammer. Say, Jamie, over there underneath that tarp, there's another wrench I might need. Would you get it for me, please? Oh, sure, Mr. Weber. Jamie pulled back the tarp, and all of a sudden, wow, what's this? Jamie, that's yours. I want you to have that. Oh, I can't take this. Sure you can, Jamie. That's my way of saying thank you for all you've done for me. Well, I haven't done anything, Mr. Weber. Well, to me you have, Jamie. I bought that for Joshua a long time ago and was never able to give it to him. I take it out every year, and I wash it and wax it and oil it up, and then I put it away. I don't have any use for it anymore, and I want you to have it. Well, thanks, Mr. Weber. Well, let's take it outside. So Jamie finished taking the tarp back, and he walked his new bicycle outside. Mr. Weber helped him take the bags of newspapers off his old bike and put them on his new bike. And, well, Mr. Weber, I'll be back later today to pick up my old bike. No, don't worry about it, Jamie. I'll just throw it on a junk pile out back. So Jamie said, okay, thanks. And he rode off to finish his paper route, and he couldn't wait to get done to get home and show his mom and dad what Mr. Weber had given to him. So he finished his route, rode home as fast as he could, pulled up the driveway, jumped off his bike, put the kickstand down, and ran in the house yelling, Mom, Dad, quick, come look. What, Jamie, are you okay? Oh, yeah, come outside and see what Mr. Weber gave me. They walked outside. They couldn't believe what they saw. Mr. Weber gave you this? Yeah, isn't it pretty? It looks old, but it's brand new. Mom, you remember Mrs. Kennedy said that Mr. Weber had bought something very special for Joshua? This is it. He was never able to give it to him, and he's had it all these years. Jamie, that is a very special bike you have. Oh, I know, Dad. No, really, Jamie, I mean it. You see that chrome medallion on the front end? Yeah, Dad, it's got some guy with a cowboy hat on. Yeah, some guy in a cowboy hat. Do you see that name written in the chrome on the crossbars? Yeah, Dad, it says Gene Autry. Who's Gene Autry? Well, Jamie, back in the 1940s and 50s, Gene Autry was very popular. He was one of the singing cowboys. He made movies, was on television, and he made records. Do you remember the song Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? Yeah. He was the very first one to sing it. He made it popular. And they made a very special bicycle in his honor. It was a limited edition. It was very hard to get. And you have one, and it's in mint condition. An antique dealer would give you a fortune for this bicycle. Oh, I'm not going to sell it, Dad. Oh, I know you won't, Jamie. I just want to make sure that you keep it locked up. Oh, I will. I'll be real careful with it. I'm going to go show the guys my bike. So Jamie left and to go show all of his friends his new bicycle. And he was just so excited every day out on a paper route. Then the next day when Jamie delivered papers at Mr. Weber's house, right as Jamie started to leave, hey, Jamie, do you think your mom and dad would let you come over and help me do some yard work and we could do some woodworking projects out in my wood shop? Well, I'll ask them. So the next day after Jamie finished his paper route, he went over to Mr. Weber's house and he started helping him do yard work, and then they started doing some projects out in the wood shop. They became very good friends. Then one day while they were working on a project, Jamie asked Mr. Weber, Mr. Weber, next Sunday at church is Friendship Day. We have to bring a friend. Would you come and be my friend for the day? Oh, I don't know, Jamie. I'll have to think about that. It's been a long time since I've been in church. Well, that's okay. You just have to come for the day and be my friend. Well, I'll have to think about it. Okay, well, church starts at 10:30 and we sit in the middle somewhere. So nothing else was said. And then Sunday morning came and Jamie's dad asked him, well, Jamie, you think Mr. Weber's going to be at church today? I don't know, Dad. We didn't say any more about it. I sure hope he will, though. So they went on to church, and Jamie kept looking over his shoulder thinking he's going to see Mr. Weber. And he never did. Church was just getting ready to start, and his mom and dad went on in and sat down. Jamie took one more look all around. He didn't see Mr. Weber, so he started in and sat down next to his parents. They just started to play music, and out of the corner of Jamie's eye, he saw something. He looked up, and there was Mr. Weber. He had a big smile on his face, and he was wearing an old, worn, wrinkled, tattered suit. He sat down next to Jamie, and Jamie handed him the songbook, and they started singing songs. When church service was over, Mr. Weber asked the Larsons to wait for him. He wanted to talk to him about something, but he wanted to go talk to Pastor first. And he was up talking to Pastor for quite a while, and you could tell that they were praying. And when he got done, he came back, and he asked the Larsons if they'd go to lunch with him. It was his treat. They agreed to, and they let Jamie pick what restaurant to go to. So they sat there for a long time and laughed and talked and just had a real good time together. And then they left to go home. And on the way home, Jamie turned to his dad and he says, boy, Dad, you sure were right. About what, son? Dad, when you look through the eyes of Christ, with the heart of Christ, and remember the cross, things do change. Why is that? Well, Jamie, I guess it can just be explained as that's the power of the cross. Well, it sure works, Dad. A month ago, I didn't even like Mr. Weber. He was a mean old grouchy man. And now he's my best friend. So they got home, and they just laid around and rested the rest of the day. Jamie went to his room early that night, and Brad and Sheila were sitting in the living room reading books by their favorite author, and the telephone rang. Brad got up and answered the phone. He talked for quite a while. Then he hung up, and he went over to Sheila and told her something, and she laid her book down and got up, and they both walked down the hallway to Jamie's bedroom. They knocked on the door. Jamie, are you asleep yet? No, come on in. So they walked in. They say, Jamie, the hospital just called. We have some bad news. Hospital? What happened, Dad? Jamie, Mr. Weber just passed away tonight. No, Dad, he's my friend. I know, son. What happened? Well, his heart just gave out, son. Well, why did the hospital call us? Well, Jamie, it seems that Mr. Weber gave your name as next of kin, first to notify in case of emergency. We're going to go over to the funeral home tomorrow and see if we can help with any arrangements. All right, Dad. Do you need to talk about it, Jamie? No, I just want to be left alone right now. Okay, son, but if you need to talk, you come to us, okay? Oh, yeah, I will. So Jamie had a real hard time falling asleep that night and got up the next morning to deliver his papers, and Brad and Sheila got up to help him. They wanted to make it as easy for him as they could. They knew he'd have a hard time, especially around Mr. Weber's house. So they finished the paper route, and then they went out for breakfast and just sat and talked for quite a while, and then they went by the funeral home to see if they could help make any arrangements. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Larson, Jamie, I'm sorry for your loss. There's not really any arrangements you have to make. Mr. Weber had already taken care of everything. It's all paid for. He doesn't want a big service. He just wants a small memorial service here in our chapel. He doesn't want anything at the gravesite. So we're going to do that tomorrow. Jamie, Mr. Weber had given me a letter to give to you. I'll leave you alone. Just let me know when you're ready to leave. And he handed Jamie the envelope. Jamie looked down at it and he handed it to his mom. Mom, do you think you could read this? I don't think I can. Sure, son. So she took the envelope and opened up the letter. Dear Jamie, I know you're probably pretty sad right now, but please don't be. I'm in a better place now. I'm with Jesus, and I'm also with Joshua and Stephanie. Again, I'd like to tell you thank you for all the special things that you did for me. You put a smile back on my face and joy back in my heart. That's something I never thought I'd ever happen again. But through you, there was. I've asked a good friend of mine to come by and talk to you and your mom and dad. There's several things I want him to discuss with you. His name is Bill Hensley. Well, Jamie, until we meet again, your friend always, Jack. Jamie turned to his dad. Well, Dad, I wonder who this Mr. Hensley is. Well, Jamie, we'll probably find out tomorrow. So the next day, they went for the memorial service. They sat there for a long time. Boy, Dad, nobody's been here to see Mr. Weber. He didn't have any friends. Well, Jamie, that's what happens a lot of times when you get old. You outlive all your friends. Well, I'm his friend. I know you are, son. He thought an awful lot of you. They were just about ready to leave themselves when all of a sudden the door opened up and a tall, thin man in a brown suit walked in. He walked over by Mr. Weber and stood there for a while, and then he came over to the Larsons. Mr. and Mrs. Larson, Jamie, I'm sorry for your loss. My name is Bill Hensley. Jack had asked me to stop by and talk to you. I'd like to give you my business card and ask that your earliest convenience come to my office. There's several things that we need to discuss and some papers that we need to sign. Sign some papers for what? Well, Mr. Larson, I'm not only Jack's friend, I'm also his attorney. And Jack is a very wealthy man. You'd never know it by the way he lived. But he's left his whole estate to Jamie. And we need to sign several things over into his name and put the rest in the trust until he turns 21. From that moment on, Jamie always tried to be the best steward that he could be with all that he had been given. He went on and finished high school, graduated from college, came back home and started his own business. He became a very prominent figure in his community. He never did sell the Weber home. To this day, he still goes over, waters the flowers, the yard, cuts the grass. Every Saturday, he takes fresh cut flowers to the cemetery. And one thing that Jamie never did forget, always remember the power of the cross. Have a blessed Easter.